Hey guys, it's Pastor Cameron coming to you. I'm excited to continue our study through Galatians with you guys. We had an awesome time last week with some of our pastors and look forward to carrying it out this week. So I am going to be covering Galatians chapter 2 verses 6 through 10. So dive in with me. It says this: "But from those who seemed to be something, whatever they were, it makes no difference to me. And God shows personal favoritism to no man. For those who seemed to be something added nothing to me, but on the contrary, when they saw the gospel for the uncircumcised has been committed to me, as the gospel was committed to Peter, for he who worked effectively in Peter for the apostleship to the circumcised also worked effectively in me towards the Gentiles. And when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that had been given to me, they gave me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, that we should go to the Gentiles and to the circumcised. And they to the circumcised." Verse 10, "They desired only that we should remember the poor, and the very thing which I was eager to do." As we dive in, I love this section. It's was kind of hard for me at first, and looking at it like, all right, what do we have to glean here from the Lord? What do we need to learn from His Word? And so I just have a couple points that I wanted to talk about. The first being comparison. I love that as Paul comes before the religious leaders, there's this great standard of the religious leaders. There's this expectation that they're the ones who walk in the court places, and they're loving the greetings and the recognition. And they were treated with high respect. They were really honored by a lot of people. They were revered. And as Paul goes before them, I love, he says he went and he met with them, making sure that they were on even terms. And he says that they added nothing to him, right? We talked about it already a couple times, that the gospel was given to Paul from God Himself. It wasn't delivered by any other man. It wasn't accredited to any other person or the apostles. It was from God. And he says that, man, even they had nothing to add to his knowledge of the gospel. But not only that, in it, there can so quickly be this comparison. I know in my heart, comparison can creep in mainly when I'm falling short and I know that I've missed the mark. I start to compare to others. Well, at least I'm better than that guy. And isn't it always the worst? Well, at least I'm not that guy over there. That guy's terrible. I'm better than that. And we compare to try and lift ourselves up and to make ourselves feel better. I loved what Pastor Zach shared last week, that man, there's no room for this in the gospel of grace. There's no room in the gospel of grace for us to work to uplift ourselves, to work to greater and higher positions. In the gospel of grace, we lay at the feet of Jesus and recognize that, man, there's nothing we can do, that He's done it. It's by His power and His strength, and there's nothing that we can do to lift ourselves up. We just lay ourselves at the feet of God and honor Him and only Him, as it kind of talks about in Matthew chapter 10. But so quickly, our hearts can be easy to compare. And I want to encourage you guys that this never leads to anything good. We're not called to compare ourselves to other believers and see how we're stacking up. We're called to compare to the Word, to see how we're living up to His Word. And His Word was given to us to show us that we're not perfect and we can't do it. We can't make it to Christ. We can't climb the ladder of success and do enough good works to get there. That we just need to come and bow before the cross, to look to Him because He saved us, showing us how unable we were. We look to Him who was able. Then it goes on and he talks about how they couldn't add anything to Him, but on the contrary, that they saw when the gospel was committed to Him, just as it had been committed to Peter. And then he goes on a little tangent talking about how the same God, the same power that was committed to Peter to go to the circumcised was also given to Paul to go to the uncircumcised. And I really enjoy this because so quickly I can also think of position as a means of God's blessing, or really a means of His love for us. That those who He loves, those who are maybe more honoring to Him, are in greater position. But Paul really humbly laying down before Him, looking at Peter and James and John, seeing these great men and saying, man, the same God that works through them, those leaders of the church, is also working through me. Occasionally when I'm reading about the amazing person of Paul or John or Peter or James, yeah, it's encouraging and the things they write are awesome, but quickly I can think, man, I'll never be that. I can't have that same great faith, that same might that they had. I can't be like Paul. He was unstoppable. His faith was so strong and he knew God so well. Man, God worked so powerfully through him. But it's so vital that we realize, family, that it's not by them, right? It wasn't Paul's strength that made him great in the eyes of man or in the eyes of God. It wasn't by the zeal, as Tommy talked about, that they were able to do these things. It was just by their zeal for God. It was his strength and his power. And what Paul's saying is true for us too, that same God who moved and worked in them and moved and worked in him lives inside of us as believers. And to recognize that we have that authority and we have that power and we have that awesomeness living and dwelling inside of us, that should change how we live, should it not? That we shouldn't look like the rest of the world that doesn't have the living God indwelling them. That we, as believers, with the God of the universe who loves us, who died for us, lives inside of us, we should look different. We should have power and authority and might that is greater than what the world has to offer. And then he goes on, right? He kind of has that little tangent, and then he says in verse 9, James, Cephas, John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that had been given to me. And they gave me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, that we should go to the Gentiles, and they to the circumcised. They desired only that we should remember the poor, the very thing which I was eager also to do. So the last thing I wanted to share with you guys is this exhorting of each other that we see here. That Peter, James, and John looked to Barnabas and Paul and they encouraged them, they exhorted them, especially in a time where, man, they were challenged. They were going through some difficulties and really working hard to share and spread the gospel. They were sending them out, that they were loving on them. They were encouraging them. They were pushing them forward. And that we too should be like this. We should be a family of believers that is reaching out, especially in this time, reaching out to each other, making sure that we are able, right, for those who aren't able to go outside of the house and get groceries, that we're doing everything we can to support them. And we're praying for each other, we're lifting each other up, we're communicating over the internet as best as we can so that we can love each other and push each other towards Christ. And I love, even in this, they do it by giving them encouragement of a specific thing. Hey, just remember, keep this in mind, go visit the poor. And I love, Paul says, the very thing which I was also eager to do. Man, let us also have the same eagerness to support and to lift up and encourage those who especially need it in this time. Hey, we love you guys. We're excited to walk through Galatians with you, and pray that this blesses you. Thanks.